for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Thorne. I'm the Subscriptions Services Director at Utilmate. This webinar is all about welcome packs and what we need to do, and what you need to do for welcome packs, both from a good idea or a customer experience perspective, but also from a regulatory perspective. So we'll get started into that topic area. So the first part is we'll just talk a little bit about how the welcome packs work. So obviously the start of the onboarding process is that you have a new customer that's signing up with you. That generally happens in one of two ways. So either a customer is coming online onto your website, onto our move-in portal, as you can see here, or you're doing it over the phone, or potentially even using your own sort of web form or something like that. So we'll start off with this one here. And so I'm a customer who wants to sign up to one of your properties. All right, so come through. For those that know this flow already, obviously you search for the address, they find it, they go, yep, great, I'm moving into that property, and then they're away from there. So they come through these steps, and then on the last step here, you get a confirmation page. So this is step one, I suppose, in the welcome letter process, and there's a number of ways of doing this. There's no real right or wrong answer here, but there's just a number of ways of doing it. So the first part of this confirmation page is we, obviously confirm the information that they've entered being correct. So it says, what address are you moving into, what date, etc. From there, we have sort of the fine print explained, or comes into your explicit informed consent. All right, and we'll talk a bit about that shortly, but that's a very much a regulatory perspective, a regulatory requirement around that. So in this example here, so Zappi being our demonstration brand, you can see here we're disclosing the prices. We're saying, hey, you are moving into this property in this building or this property. These are the prices. We're disclosing the payment terms. We're saying how long they've got to pay their bills and their payment methods. So this is a very common out of the box way we have of doing this. The other ways of doing this screen here, and here's a few more examples. I'll just blow that up a bit so we can see it all. So the first one here is you don't need to disclose the rates at this point. You need to disclose your rates to the customer as part of the onboarding process, but you don't necessarily need to disclose it before they submit that move-in button. So some of our retailers and customers choose to disclose it there because from a customer experience perspective, and giving customers information they want and need, that's probably one of the primary things. If I was a customer signing up to one of your properties that I want to know, so it is good, in my opinion, to disclose that information, because otherwise you'll just get questions about it down the track a little bit. But you don't, as you can see here, you don't need to do it on that page. You can do it in the welcome pack. You can do it at other points in the process, right? And here's an example of someone signing up onto a market retail contract. That same screen essentially without the pricing. So it still says your payment terms, it still says your payment options. It also has some terms and conditions, or some statement about what you are agreeing to. You'll notice in this example here, it says here are your terms and conditions. Equally in the live example we've got here, we've got a link off to the terms and conditions. So regardless whether you choose to show the rates or not, you've still got to have a link off to your terms and conditions. So that's a very basic example there. The next one we've got here is where you are disclosing, it's where a building has a different set of rates or a different set of terms and conditions. So often you have buildings that are under a market retail contract. So you might be an authorized retailer, you have all your buildings under a market retail contract, and that's great because you can then it simplifies this process. You have one set of terms and conditions, here are your prices, makes things easy. But often we have customers that have a mix of buildings between where it's a market retail contract and also an exemption or a billing agent type of an arrangement, in which case the terms and conditions can differ based on the building that you're signing up to, and that gets a little bit more fiddly to set up, but still quite doable within Utilmate. So in this example here, you can see we've got a building specific explicit informed consent. So in this case here, it says, view your BPID or basic plan information document, and that's a building specific document which can and often does include the prices for that building. So we don't show it on the screen as such, but you do disclose it within this document. Right, so it can be in there, and also a lot of the other terms and conditions associated with that building vary based on the building the person's signing up to. So that's the key difference here. We're still disclosing the payment terms, payment options, things like that. In this example here, they've chosen to display information about the cooling off period. That's a regulatory requirement. Again, I'll show you the sort of regulations shortly. We were hoping to have Pratish from Compliance Quarter on the line to take a few calls as well, but he's just having a few problems getting into the presentation, so he's on the other end, and I'll take you through some of his content anyway, if he isn't able to make it in. So you can see here they're putting some information about the cooling off period, that not necessarily required, but in this instance, we've chosen to do that on this one. And then the next one here is, I suppose, a more comprehensive one where, again, we're what we'd call an explicit informed consent with the pricing. So you can see here we've got all the pricing, whether it's tax inclusive or exclusive. Again, in Victoria, it's a requirement to be tax inclusive in any pricing that you talk about. In the other states, not so, but most of our customers take the approach that it's very difficult for them talking to customers if it's inclusive and exclusive. So what they do is they just go, right, if we're operating in Victoria, or to make life easy, every rate we talk about for residential customers is GST inclusive. So that's what most of our people do. And in this case here, you can see here that all the prices are tax inclusive. So you have the pricing, again, the same information, your payment terms, payment options, and then some terms around, some I suppose wording around what you're agreeing to links off to the terms and conditions, any privacy policy, etc. So I suppose one of the questions we had for this webinar about what is Utilmate responsible for, what are we responsible as customers? So in a real, to put it succinctly, we provide you the tools to have a compliant electricity or water or whatever it might be billing system, including the welcome letters and the explicit informed consent. It is up to you to ensure that what you are doing is compliant. There's big differences often between whether you're an authorised retailer, an exempt retailer under a billing agent arrangement. If you're doing water or gas or telco or something else, it can all get very complicated and different. So we're able to support all those things, but you need to be clear and confident that what you are presenting on this suits your business. Right. So that's sort of the explicit informed consent page here. So obviously customer goes through that, they click on move in. Oh, that's great. The other way obviously is in the CRM itself. So in here, you can go through, you can create a new customer, you can do a move in, right? And at that point, you're probably having to take a voice recording or something like that to capture the explicit informed consent. So that's obviously outside Utilmate and what we do, and you've likely got a script or something similar that your agents are going through to do that. Obviously, wherever possible, it's always good to get people going through the online portal to save you time, and I think, if I'm honest, customers probably prefer that as well. Right, so now as far as the where to find your welcome letters, so in the system itself, in here, what we've got is if you come into your maintenance area and you go letters, emails, SMS, this is where all your letter templates are kept, right? And some of them are very simple type templates, right? So you see a whole bunch of them here. If I just expand this list, sorry. Right, you got things like obviously your direct debit notices, hardship notices, reminder notices, disconnection notices, all sorts of things in here. Welcome letters are probably one of the more complicated or involved to set up. So in here, you'll see there are welcome letters in here. I've actually just got them open over here as well. So what they look like is something like this. Right, so here's an example welcome letter. Right, so the Utilmate system's designed, it's called a workflow. So we can set these up, we can run them at 5 o'clock each day, we can run them at 9 o'clock each day, we can run them every hour, whatever it is. And so every time you get a move into the system, it will automatically generate and have a welcome letter ready to go for that customer. So as far as the content of that welcome letter, so there's a few, I suppose I'll cover off the good customer experience or the good things we've seen first off, right, about what is good to include in there. So obviously this is probably the first communication this customer is going to receive from your business, right? So it's important for it to be nice and professional, layout all nice, including the things they need to know. So the first thing to mention is a nice greeting I think we've got here. So, thank you for completing. Often there's a big difference between if a customer is chosen to go with you or they have to go with you. So if you're the retailer for a building, which a lot of our customers are, they obviously have no choice really to sign up with you guys. So, your messaging around, you've signed up with us, why, what services, what value we provide. So you might be putting some solar on their roof, your prices might be great, whatever, have a great My Account portal. So a bit of a message about why we're so fantastic and why it's great that you've signed up with us. So that's sort of a good intro or good first sentence or bit in here. The other bit you sort of outline what's in this pack, because it can be quite an avalanche of paperwork, and the reality is you have to do it from an explicit informed consent perspective and from a regulatory perspective, but 90% of people probably haven't got the time or inclination to read all the detail. So it's good to just outline, hey, these are all the things that we've included. So you sort of say, hey, what's in this pack? The My Account portal from our systems perspective and hopefully from your business's perspective is a big selling point as well. So actually saying to them, hey, we've got this great My Account portal. It's available to you to go and get your information. Right, and then well, what do I do now? So you can sort of say, hey, you've got this pack, sit back, you can mention the cooling off period if you want to, things like that. Right, so this is a very basic welcome letter, is what we call without pricing. So you see it's got no pricing in it. The idea is it has at least 2 attachments. So it probably has a pricing sheet attached with it. So if you're not disclosing it in the letter itself here, you'll have to have an attachment. So it'd be a building basic plan information document attached to this, which does disclose the prices. So something in this welcome letter does have to disclose them. So you can choose to do it in the letter. And the advantage of that is that it's all dynamic. Our system can produce all the rates. You put it on here, you have one template, it's all merged and done nicely. If you have basic plan information documents, so terms and conditions and rates for each building, you obviously have to have a separate URL or separate PDF, a separate document set up for each building. And then as you bring on new buildings, that becomes a bit more onerous to maintain and do it that way. So this is an example where you'd expect the basic plan information document to have the rates, and you'd also probably have a terms and conditions as a separate attachment. The next bit here is essentially a very similar welcome letter, but you can see it does include the prices. So in this case here, it might be, if you're on a market retail contract especially, you would include the terms of the contract itself, so the terms and conditions for that. But rather than having a different set of terms and conditions for every single building, which would get quite onerous to maintain and administer, we merge the rates into here. Right, so you can see here it's showing with and without. So you can show both with and without GST, just with GST, etc. So this is the same letter with that information. The other part just in this move-in process to think about, which we find quite useful, is the moving outside of it. So when a customer comes into here and they select a property and they go, hey, I'm moving into this property, they go through, they complete this, they go move in, that will generate a welcome letter for them, which is great. But we can also at the same time do a moving out notice to the previous customer. So it's not a regulatory thing at all, but what we find, and here's an example of it here. So, it talks to them and says, hey, someone is moving, someone's told us they're moving into your property. This is going to happen on this date. Thanks for being a customer, all that kind of stuff. So there's no action that is needed, but the reason this is really useful is, one, it can stop them calling. They could say, oh look, that's all sorted. I don't need to call you or do anything myself. The move out's taken care of. So they go, oh, that's really professional, and one less thing for me to do when I'm moving out, which is a busy time. Great. The other thing that it's quite useful for is, this people selecting the right apartment or property they're moving into in this drop-down list is not foolproof. Like, customers can think, oh, moving into unit 2201, and they'll pick 2301 or something like that, right? That does happen, and there's no real systematic way to ensure a customer gets the right apartment every single time. So if this is then generated to the person that's moving out and someone has got the wrong apartment for some reason, it'll hopefully prompt them to give you a call, to drop you a message and say, well, what are you talking about? I'm not moving out. And it saves a whole lot of down the track sort of drama around, reversing bills, fixing things up when someone gets their first bill and it's for the wrong apartment and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very useful tool to save that headache down the track. And as I say, it's a good customer experience anyway, to do that. All right, so as far as going back to the content of the welcome letters, so again, this is the ones you were looking at here, these are the PDF attachments. And the reason we do a PDF attachment with all the content, and that is the welcome letter that has all the information in it from a regulatory perspective. The reason we do that is obviously not all customers give you an email address. Not all customers want email correspondence, some want post, right? So what we do is we produce it as a PDF, which is then either able to be attached to an email or it is able to be sent, printed out and posted to a customer. So by doing both, it's one document which takes care of both purposes. Right, so this is the content, and this is where you put all the information. This is the thing you need to ensure has all the information. As far as the welcome letter itself, so this is the email that the PDF gets attached to. Right, so what we'd recommend here is just keep it nice and simple. So you give customers the base, the information they really want to know, but there's no point in repeating everything that's in the PDF attachment anyway. As I said before, you do need to disclose all that information, but people are only going to read it if they're interested, and it's a way of you can verify that you've given them the information, but at least they'll see, hey, yep, you've got my my application to move into this address, and here's the basic information you need to know. The other part with the My Account portal, so see here it mentions about the My Account portal. We do actually have a process where we can auto register customers for the My Account portal. So by default, a customer does a move-in, they get their welcome letter, and then if they've got the inclination or interest, they can come back to the My Account portal here at some point in the future, and there's a register button. So on the main page, there's a button that says register. So they can come onto here, just loading. All right, so they can go create a login here and they can register themselves, right, which is great. And a big chunk of customers will do that. You can also auto register them as part of the move-in process. So you can just take the initiative and say, hey, we'll auto register them, and they'll receive an additional email like this. So they'll get their welcome letter, it's unaffected. They will also get their registration email that says something like this, and we can put some more content in here. We've taken the initiative and decided to sign you up for our My Account portal. If you'd like to use it, click here, sort of thing. So it is something that most of our customers probably do, is just auto register people for the My Account, and that's something that we believe is a good thing to do as well. All right, now onto the compliance side of things. All right, so the big thing here is this thing called explicit informed consent. Now the rules itself, this is just a link from the AEL or a document from the AEL website, are very broad, and this is where I was hoping to have Pratish on the line to help me out with some of this stuff. And he said, by all means, he's on the line at the moment, but by all means, if you fire through some detailed or hard compliance questions, then he will be able to respond to those either or during this or after this webinar as well. Okay, so With the explicit informed consent, as you said, it's very broad. It sort of talks about, the consent is informed, it's voluntary, they have the capacity to provide consent. So it's not overly prescriptive as to what they need to do from a compliance quarter perspective. So this is these guys are the experts in this. So Pratish prepared this little presentation for us, right? So it talks about these 4 areas. So the requirements, the calling off period, timing, and non-compliance. So as far as the requirements around the space, so you've got 2 things. You've got the requirements before a formation of a contract. So, by that, it's, before the customer clicks on this move in button, and then you've got also the after the formation of contract, so after they click on that move in button, right? So again, verbally or electronically or in writing. Right. So before, so obviously if you're taking it over the phone, you need to have a script, then you're repeating them, repeating a script back to the customer, hopefully recording the customer's acceptance of that. So you've got that all in writing. And then also electronically or in writing. So this is the electronically part here. So electronically we're presenting to the customer here. So that's the before, and then the after, provided via the customer's preferred method of communication. And that's, as I said before, customers have email, they have post. We present those PDFs, you can print them and post them, you can email them, but that's providing that communication in the customer's preferred communication method. All right, so it's a single written disclosure statement, and the key things that this needs to include. Right, so I'll see if I can blow that up for you a bit. Right, so first thing here, all the prices, charges, termination payments, penalties, etc. So any charges that the customer is going to get billed for, right? And what we have is we've got a couple of ways of doing it. One, in the letter, as you said, we can disclose all the rates. You can put fees and charges, all sorts of things there. You can choose not to, like this one here, and you can put it in some sort of basic plan information documents, so include all that information. And the third thing you can do is still have the letter like this, but you can also use the AER pricing sheets for this purpose. So some of our retailers get a login to the AER portal, Energy Made Easy portal, and you can create and download these documents, right? And they contain all that same information. So the bottom line is you need to disclose your pricing and fees and charges to customers as part of the welcome letter process. How you do it is, 1, in your own basic plan information document. Option 2 is in the letter itself, and option 3 is using the AER Energy Made Easy website. And the Utilmate system is capable of attaching these, so we can attach these to different, based on each building. So we can attach the right AER pricing sheet. We can attach the right, on these ones here, we can attach the right BPID document for those ones. And these ones here, obviously it's a lot more easy because we're not choosing what things to attach, but because all the rates are being merged into here, right? So that becomes a lot more easy from that perspective. Right, so that's all the pricing, the commencement date and duration of the contract. So again, we've got the commencement date on the confirmation page up here. So it's saying your start date up here. We've also got it in the welcome letter over there. So that's the commencement date. The duration, we don't have any, really, not many or any customers do residential contracts of term that we've seen these days. So you can put a duration or expiry date, but for our customers, they don't they don't really have terms that often. If any requirement is to be or made to be complied with, so all the documentation, all these welcome letters and everything that we're presenting, they're all stored in your Google Drive or OneDrive. They're also just stored or available from the Documents tab in the Utilmate CRM, so you can always refer back to them, so that it is a record, an audit record of your explicit informed consent for that customer. Right, the calling off period, so that should be a statement or sentence in your welcome letter. It is quite an important one. The customer has the right to call off right? And we'll talk about that just on the slide down just a little bit further. And any complaints about any marketing activity, etc. I'm not sure that really applies to off-market or embedded retailers so much, because you're not marketing to people so much, but that's something you can probably check in with the compliance quarter guys about. Right. And then as far as the calling off requirements go, so customers have the right to withdraw within 10 business days. So that's what is meant by the calling off period. And so that's after the customer receives the welcome pack. So again, for email customers, that will be same day as they sign up. For the post, you'll need to allow, I imagine, up to 5 business days to ensure the customer's got it for that calling off period, and they have the right to withdraw. And this stuff's more talking about, I think, switches in the market, so switching from one retailer to another. So a customer moving into one of your buildings, they have the right to probably withdraw from your market retail contract, go on a standard contract perhaps in some instances, but it's a little bit different as to what that means for a embedded type customer. Yep, and then so the timing of all this information, so again, very not vague, but general sort of statement there. It just says it's as soon as practicable. So that is when you need to provide this information. As I said, we can typically we have a welcome letter process that runs at the end of the day, and it picks up all the move-ins for that day, and that's just, depends on your volume, but we do have some where we can run it every hour or even sooner if we need to be. So customers receive these welcome letters very quickly, very shortly after they sign up. There's no technical requirement or anything like that about why you couldn't do it sooner or slower or whatever. It's just based on volume. All right, and then the other things that just need to be aware of as far as attaching in this space here is, we mentioned this is the compliance check for explicit informed consent, so we sort of talked about that a little bit. The pricing sheet we've talked about, which is one of the alternatives to actually disclosing prices to customers. Now the AER fact sheet is something that exempt retailers need to display to customers. So and I'm not really sure why that rule exists or why it's like that. It's a bit of a strange one to me, but anyway, if you're an authorized retailer, you don't need to disclose this to customers. If you're an exempt retailer, you need to attach this or disclose this information in this form, I believe, to customers. So we can have tags on different buildings to say, hey, this is an exempt site versus a market site or whatever for those authorized retailers, or whether you need to do it. But generally, a lot of our retailer customers have this attachment and attach it to the welcome letters as well, and it just talks about your options to switch away or take your site to another retailer within the building, sort of thing. So yeah, that's it. So the other thing is a lot of what I've just talked about is sort of very energy or electricity specific. The other markets we work in, telco, ISP, water, gas, gas less so, but those other products, all the things I've said around customer experience, it's a good idea to disclose your rates. You'll just get questions on it if you don't, or you'll be seen to being a bit secretive. So all that stuff still applies. It's just from a regulatory point of view, it's a bit more of the Wild West. There are not as many hard rules in that sort of market, so you don't have to do a lot of these things, but I'd suggest to you it's still a good idea to do most of the things I just talked about. It's a good idea to advertise to my account. It's a good idea to do that move out email. It's a good idea to disclose your prices. All that sort of stuff is still relevant. The last thing I just wanted to mention here is sort of what we're working on in this space. And so obviously we get feedback from our customers from time to time around what's a good idea, what they want, all that sort of stuff. So one of the things that's come up in the last few months that we're working on is ability to confirm and verify email addresses and phone numbers. So in this move-in flow, we obviously capture someone's mobile number, we can capture an email address, whether they've typoed, done a typo on it or intentionally misrepresent or giving you misinformation there as far as what their contact details are, you don't know at this point. So we can make sure an email address has got an @ sign and a dot, phone numbers are a certain length, all that sort of stuff, but we don't verify that information at the moment. So what we're doing at the moment, some piece of dev is working on a verification process, and you've seen it on lots of other sites whereby they enter an email address, it fires an email off to that email address, and you have to click a link to verify that you've got it, and then you're in a verified or authenticated account. So we're looking at the same, very similar sort of processes. So we're just working through the details around that and exactly how it works. So that'll be something in early 2023 that we're looking to release and launch, and that will obviously help you get a better accuracy and uptake of email addresses and phone numbers. So that's sort of the content that I wanted to go through here as far as welcome letters. Before the meeting, before this webinar, we got a few little questions from some customers. We've got, as I said before, we've got Pratish from Compliance Quarter on the line here, so I think he'll keep an eye on the chat. If there's any hard compliance questions that I can't answer, we'll take a log of those and we'll get back to you on those separately. So some of the questions that we've had here before the webinar was where all the documents get saved to. Again, I think I covered that, so you'll find them in your OneDrive or Google Drive. You'll see in there's a folder called letters, welcome letters, and then it'll say archive, a date, and so all the PDFs, etc., are stored in there. You'll also find them in the CRM against a customer, right? So you'll see on the Documents tab, if I go into one of these guys here, on the Documents tab, you'll see all the documents, including welcome letters that we've sent to customers. As far as how do you go about turning on welcome letters? So if you're not already doing, I'll just show you the document screen here that I'm referring to. So here's the document screen that I'm referring to. So all the welcome letters will appear in here, just like invoices, reminder letters, anything else. As far as how to turn it on is you'll need to raise a support ticket with us. So it's what we call a workflow. So we can turn it on, but before we do that, we just verify with yourself that your welcome letter is all set up and looking okay. So we need to talk through just some of those items that we just mentioned now. So, where do you want to disclose your prices? Have you got all your links ready to go for if you're doing a basic plan information document, or if you're merging the prices in, does it all merge okay? Are you doing GST inclusive, exclusive? So we'll just work through some of that detail with you to make sure that that the welcome letters are all looking okay before we turn that beast on. So that's it's a workflow. And so the answer is you raise a support ticket with us and we'll work through that with you to get that all set up. Again, we had a couple of questions around the water side of things, and as I just said before, it's a lot less regulated than the electricity space, but all the things I've just mentioned are probably are a good idea with that sort of stuff. Around again that question, we've got a question here around where does Utilmate stop and where do I begin? So as I said before, we will give you the tools. So we will have a system there is able to be used in a compliant manner. So, with the prices, without the prices, but based on the nature of your business, the type of retailer you are, the types of products you're servicing, even the states that you're operating in, will mean different things as far as what you have to do. And so that's ultimately up to you to make sure that you are compliant for the nature of your business, but we will provide a system that is capable of being compliant for all those different things. So those were the main questions. I think I've answered anything else little that sort of came through pre-meeting, pre-webinar. So I'm just checking now if we've got any Q&A from the meeting just now. Just loading up for me, just one moment. All right, so we've got some if you guys can see your chat, you should be able to see some just some Q&A, some chat from Pratish there from Compliance Quarter. So he's just saying he's happy to answer any questions that you may got. So if you chuck them in the questions now, he'll be happy to answer them. Alternatively, you can obviously reach out to him directly post the webinar, and he can probably put you on the right path with some of this stuff as well. Yeah, so it's got a question here about, what record is created on UML that we can rely on to prove that we obtained EIC correctly. That's a good question. So when a customer is on the flow here and you go, you tick these boxes and you go move in, right? That is your electronic explicit informed consent. So by a customer doing that, we will record that in the calls and activities or notes and activities screen here. So you'll see a record of them saying customer has done a move in at this time, etc. In the screen. So you'll see it sitting in here. You can click on it and see all the information they entered. So that's your electronic proof of explicit informed consent. The other one is, you want to prove that you've sent in the welcome pack. So obviously in here as well, any correspondence that's happened. So we can filter this down here. So I can turn these off. Any correspondence that we sent, including welcome letters, you'll see a record of it. So it'll say welcome letter sent to this customer. So you'll see the date and timestamp. You'll also see it in the document screen. So if you ever have a question around, did we successfully comply or do all the explicit informed consent steps, then yes, you've got that information here. And then they've got a question here around, can we approve new signups before we release welcome letters? Good question. And so the answer to that is not at the moment. You can't, as soon as the customer does a move in, it automatically flows into the system. What you can do is a couple of reports. There's one called an onboarding report, firstly. So you can use that report to see who's doing move in and move outs online or in the CRM. So you can monitor that. The other thing it does is it creates an activity, as I said before, when a customer completes that online move-in form. So by default, it's just a note. It's just a note to record the explicit informed consent. What you can do is you can turn that into an activity if you want. And activity means that it's now going to be open. It's not just a note. It's going to be open and assigned to someone. And by doing that, it will appear in your screen here. So you'll see them here, and then it's up to someone. You could have a business process internally, which someone goes and approves them or does credit checks or whatever you want to do there to actually approve those move-ins. And as far as picking, it's another good question. Also, when signing up, does the resident need to pick all utilities for the unit, or does it do them all? And the answer is it does them all. So when I pick an address in here, if I'm in here and I go, sorry, we'll grab that. When I'm in here and I do an address, it'll only show the address once. So it'll be unit 2203. If unit 2203 has got power and water, it is automatically going to move them into both utilities. So obviously it doesn't make sense to just move into one utility. And it also doesn't make sense for a customer to have to pick the property twice. So the fact that there's two utilities, power and water, it's more of an internal thing to the system. Customers don't really need to know about that so much. Where they do need to know about that, or it becomes a bit more tricky, again, but the system handles it, is if you're disclosing prices like this one here. So you can see here it's got electricity usage and it's got water usage. So you can have lots of different combinations of multiple utilities at units, and it is important to disclose all the types of utilities you're supplying and the rates for those utilities. So it does, add some complexity, but from a customer perspective, they just need to pick the right unit, and that's it. Recording this presentation, yep, Tracy's already answered. We'll send that out after this webinar. Great. All right. Well, have we got any more questions from anyone before we finish up? No? Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time. And yes, and until the next webinar, we'll probably be in the new year, and we'll come up with a subject we get lots of questions on between now and then, and we'll do the next webinar then. Okay. Thank you all.